Hello everyone! A questionable combination, a hotel with a rooftop pool and a seismically active zone. The tremors rock the tower and the water pours down from above as if from a tilted bowl. The sight is terrifying and I hope there is no one up there. An earthquake that caught tourists during a walk through a snowy forest is a frightening winter fairy tale, but who knows what is hidden beneath a thick layer of snow, solid ground, or a potential fissure? Clearly in China, people have to get used to winter earthquakes too. The bikes all jumped at once and collapsed to the ground as if someone had tossed them up on a palm. A second later, the air was already swaying with dust. The animals were chaotically leaping around in panic and the camera was shaking. An earthquake changes everything in a second, and where you stop becomes decisive for how much sense it makes for you to make plans for the evening. What would you feel if you saw a house collapse right before your eyes? Would you feel like the hero of another James Bond film? It is unclear why the building is folding up while the others are standing firmly, so it is hardly an earthquake. Perhaps one decrepit structure simply gave up the ghost. A properly organized workplace will not only provide comfort, but also save you from injuries during a strong earthquake. Just a second ago, everything seemed stable, and now the girl has ended up in a hut made of furniture that happened to group itself successfully around her desk, protecting her from other objects falling. Afterward, of course, a complete inventory of the goods will have to be carried out, but the main thing is that she was not hurt. Local residents watched in amazement as a new volcano was born from under a pole. What looked like lava turned out to be the consequence of a powerful underground short circuit, which the arriving teams of electricians eliminated. You could say they arrived at a hotspot. Can you imagine New York without light? That night, the city plunged into darkness, but before that, the entire sky was flooded with a neon blue glow that flickered nervously, frightening children and adults. During a major accident at a power plant, a huge amount of energy was released into the atmosphere, electrifying the sky like a magic lantern. The show lasted several minutes, and restoring the electricity took long hours.
I'm here, because it's like really scary to me.
No, that is scary.
And this is a local village shaman somewhere in the backwoods entertaining himself with fire. The Lord of the Flame is probably bored in the evenings and puts on a mini show for his beloved self. Who knows, maybe he sets fans on fire, or perhaps there is some hidden or obvious meaning in this undertaking. I am waiting for your guesses in the comments. This is not rain, not a hurricane, and not just a storm wind. This is how a fire spreads. The squall carries a real fiery whirlwind, devouring everything in its path. It is simply astonishing how fast and powerful it is. Even damp vegetation will not stop it. The wind instantly dries everything, and the flame swallows it. Putting out a fire is another suitable plot for a disaster movie. With no light, no visibility, and no ability to breathe normally, the fire crew coordinates their actions for an accurate water drop. Whether they manage to defeat the flames or not now depends on these commands.
There's another water tender on Powerhouse at 299.
I suppose that on this day, the city was flooded with reports of UFO sightings, but in reality, this is just a smoke ring. Rings like this form during explosions. For example, if a transformer somewhere has blown, and they continue to swirl within themselves for a long time, people often mistake flying rings for some kind of devilish tricks. But believe me, this is nothing more than the result of a technical incident. Something is also wrong in the city, either an explosion at a factory or power plant or some other kind of glow. If it were a fire, a column of smoke would be visible, but we see only bright light. Do you have any ideas about the cause of these flashes? Please share them in the comments. Scorching sun, a full trash container, and it is good that no one was nearby. Improper disposal of batteries or old accumulators, gas canisters, or cans with combustible materials can threaten the injuries or life of whoever happens to be there at the wrong time. The sun is the same kind of halogen, it simply heats the trash more slowly. Who knows what else ended up in the bin, and perhaps some chemical reaction came to help the temperature. I am now going to throw trash from far away. Who needed to arrange a pyrotechnic show on a beach that does not look like a tourist spot in the middle of the season? The thing is that this is often how people get rid of large carcasses of dead animals that wash ashore and decompose for a long time, spreading a stench and unsanitary conditions. A whale carcass is blown up to dispose of it safely, prevent environmental pollution, and avoid a spontaneous rupture that could lead to infectious contamination. Of course, the moment when tons of rot fly into the air will not be the most pleasant one, but small marine animals will quickly eliminate the consequences. Looking at these shots, we can establish several facts without any hints. First, these are definitely not clouds. Second, the people in the video speak Chinese, but they do not mention volcanoes. That means this is not the beginning of an eruption. Now let us turn to the context and understand that what we have before us is not a natural cataclysm, but an incident of technological origin. I do not know whether this sounds like a joke from the realm of dark humor, but these clouds of smoke were the result of an explosion at a fireworks factory. You understand yourself that in itself, it is a warehouse of explosive materials that are only waiting for the right opportunity. Here it is, a truly hellish cauldron in the middle of the performance. The volcano vent spews fire and lava, sparks and smoke, and this is only the beginning of the spectacle. The red-hot flow still has to break out and make the whole long journey down the slope. Molten volcanic lava crawls down the slope and steers onto the road. Here it meets no obstacles and can claim the asphalt for itself. That is why the flow decided to turn happily, so it could take a comfortable ride along the highway. Here is another scene from the colorful spectacle of nature that is regularly staged in Hawaii. Now the cloud curtain will open and a fantastic picture will appear before the tourists. A stream of lava pours straight into the ocean with hissing and smoke like a contrast shower. You cannot stay here long. The air is pierced with toxic acid vapors and filled with dust. So the show is short. A few spectacular selfies and it is time to return to the hotel. This scene, filmed in Okinawa, shows that volcanoes not only take part in changing the landscape of land, but also invade the sea. What we take for foam is actually tiny particles of pumice, which show how much powerful energy volcanic activity produces. In essence, that piece we use to polish our heels is rock, molten volcanic glass, where the many pores are gas bubbles in lava that instantly cooled when it entered the ocean. Someone decided to conduct a laboratory experiment in real conditions. They stopped up on a piece of ice in order to lower it into a lava flow and see whether the ice block would disappear in a second. But no, in nature everything is not the way it is in cartoons. With extreme differences in temperature, more cunning options come into play. The heat of the lava causes instant evaporation of the outer layer of the ice block, which creates a layer of smoke between the opposing elements. It serves as a separator between ice and fire, so the ice block stays afloat for a while. I would have been glad to have such visual physics lessons at school, but perhaps Hawaiian school children study it exactly this way. Lava and avalanche are similar words, and the essence of the phenomenon is also similar, but the images of a volcanic eruption and a snowslide are diametrically opposite in appearance. Snow does not always simply lie there, it can move, and its density also differs, like that of air and water. Temperature and wind also control it as a material. If the lower layers have become loose, then the entire dense mass of snow and ice from the mountaintop collapses downward, which is what is called an avalanche. At a Russian mountain resort, a stalemate arose. Now there is nothing to leave in and no road to leave on. Cars in the road ended up buried under a thick snowy mass. I hope the refrigerator in their restaurant is full of food so they can hold out until help arrives. People live in regions where the weather tries to surprise rather than please, so this snowfall is also about to turn into a blizzard, a solid squall of wind and snow, when visibility drops to zero and the snowstorm sweeps everything into impassable drifts. But it seems someone will still manage to enjoy even this. This snowy pile, as you might assume, did not appear here because of a whim of capricious weather, and in general, it is not snowy at all. This is what deposits of chemicals look like when they react with water and form foam. I do not know which services created this chemical mess on the street, but I would not play with these snowballs. These little houses look like they are made of sugar. In one night, they turned into candies. This happens when a warmer wind from the sea sprays moisture and salt onto the coast, where cold weather reigns. And then, layer by layer, the entire infrastructure is sealed with a dense crust. And since the temperature outside remains steadily below zero, the chances that the town will be released from the spell the following night are not so great. Why does this ice seem alive? It even seems to breathe, as if some giant got stuck in shallow water and became covered with a crust. What do you think? Could this be a whale that really ended up in an icy trap but continues to breathe? A small village in Greenland, surrounded by icebergs from the sea, became an observation point for grand events connected with the life of glaciers. At first glance, they seem unshakable, but the ice here is in constant motion because of temperature changes, the influence of currents, and gravity. Sometimes one small crack is enough to create a thunderous sound along the entire coast. The life of a glacier is not a frozen statue, but a fully active process in which every day brings changes. Melted areas and cracks set the water in motion, so the ice does not remain the same. The shape changes, let us say, in the direction of reduction. Gradually, the water is released and the remaining mass settles. A desert does not necessarily mean hellish heat. Sometimes it is devilish cold. When the sky is clear, the air is dry, and there is no wind, you can easily freeze stiff here as if in a freezer. Another lesson in curious physics for those who have never seen anything like this with their own eyes. Water has the unique property of expanding when it freezes. Does your freezer door also not close tightly? Here we see the same thing but in larger volumes. A sharp change in temperature on the surface forms an icy mass that has nowhere to go. If the area of a lake is measured in square kilometers, then this icy mush spills over the shore like over the sides of a little saucepan, and we see an invasion of icy hedgehogs in the surroundings. These needles are the thinnest icicles, born very recently. Another ice tsunami, but on a larger scale. When the same phenomenon of frozen water displacement occurs in a larger reservoir, for example a sea harbor or a large lake, the pieces of ice turn out to be weightier as well, and the spectacle itself resembles the breaking of a glacier more than an invasion of icicles. Admire these blocks. They look like enormous topazes, so unrealistically beautiful are the transparent blue shades shimmering inside them. Tsunamis also happen on rivers. Perhaps the impulse came from somewhere in the big water, for example, a heavy truck passed there. And now the wave will help the banks a little, and the children will get a few more bright impressions for the day. Another video guide on why you should not park cars on an embankment. One wave is enough for it to splash even into your coffee if you were sitting at home by an open window, about 10 meters from the sea. Life is a constant lottery. Even the choice of the road you were driving on is not an accident, but the right decision. Had you ended up on its opposite side, the day would have turned out differently. When all the energy of lightning is directed into a tree saturated with water, it essentially explodes and instantly falls apart into pieces like a construction set. I think we will have to watch it again to understand what happened here. Another high-rise building was left without football in the evening. Lightning decided to disconnect them from the broadcast. It is good if there are friends in the neighboring block where everything remained all right. A huge storm front covers the city, and the lightning flashes quite ominously. I think everyone in town will have the same plans for the evening today. Stay home and unplug electrical appliances. It is good if the thunderstorm did not come during the broadcast of the Football World Championship. A typhoon is like a fire hose. It washes away everything in a row with its powerful jets. A person is to such wind what a sheet of paper is to an open window. The footage was taken at a Russian seaside resort. At first glance, this water vortex looks like a giant column that rotates and connects the sky with the earth, or more precisely with the water. When warm air meets colder air, it begins to twist rapidly like a screw, and all of this is inside a storm front. People apparently are in no hurry to leave the beach, impressed by the scale of the spectacle. They simply do not think about the force of the wind that accompanies this hellish pipe. Another fairy tale place is located a few kilometers north of the Indian city of Pune. There, nature laughs at the earthly law of gravity. You stand above a cliff and pour water down, expecting it to obey and go there. But the mischievous wind catches the splashes and returns them to you. Powerful upward air currents spray the water upward. I wonder what it is like for birds and other inhabitants to live here. They must surely do everything in reverse, as if in Through the Looking Glass. Why does one of the most grandiose phenomena of nature, a shelf cloud, look like the approach of the end of the world? A massive wall stretching across the entire horizon carries with it a very noticeable change in the weather, a storm with hail and possibly a hurricane. If such a view unfolds before you in the sky, it is time to make a competent decision. Go straight through the black curtain of storm clouds, or find a way to avoid this risky meeting. The atmosphere can change its mood in a few minutes, and instead of a weekend beach holiday, people get an apocalyptic situation. The hurricane struck suddenly, and you cannot hide from it under an umbrella. Everything around is flying, and judging by the color of the water in the sky, a downpour with hail is approaching. Therefore, the only right decision is to get out of there as quickly as possible and not hope that the weather will take pity. The roof elegantly separates from the building and gracefully flies off, landing like a sheet of plywood. Have you ever seen paper roofs? This only means that we are observing the process from far away. How the driver managed to predict the trajectory of its fall is interesting. Apparently, the wind was very consistent and unambiguous. And here we have a squall of rain, a hurricane, and disaster, complete disaster. The metal roof falls like a crumpled piece of paper. The wind also tore it into dangerous sharp shreds. The cars and bikes in this parking lot did not have a good time. You should not underestimate the force of the wind and overestimate the strength of structures with sheet roofs. Unlike large tornadoes that are born from grand storms, this hot, dry wind does not come from the sky. Heated, dry ground on a clear day gives heat back into the air, and it begins to spin. Such whirlwinds can often be seen in fields or open areas, when grass, leaves, or trash join the process and begin to dance in a circle. These phenomena, nevertheless, belong among meteorologically dangerous ones, and since they cause active evaporation of the already small percentage of moisture from the ground, they can threaten grain crops during the ripening period. A creepy scene that can be included in a horror movie without editing. A black cloud hangs in the sky, a tornado pipe sticks out of it, a siren howls, dogs echo it, and the silhouettes of houses on the horizon look like an ominous slum. The colorful footage, however, does not cause panic in the author of the recording. He merely states that the vortex column has begun to shrink. Does this mean that people in these places are used to such pictures? Extreme weather is forming in Florida over Fort Lauderdale. When air vortices gain enough strength to reach the ground, they form a tornado column, and now all that remains is to watch as it wrecks the city. A transformer explodes, causing a bright blue flash in the sky, and the yachts at the marina get caught in a whirlpool. Florida often faces such spontaneous tornadoes when ocean wind combines with a strong thunderstorm. The authors of the video were lucky. The elements caught them not on the open sea and not in the street, but in an apartment with a good view where they could calmly assess the situation. The soundtrack that accompanies this scene is not a tune on a harmonica, but an alarm signal. The tornado decided to take a walk along the road, and those who do not pay attention to it may be very unlucky. You should not rely on the idea that somehow it will pass by. The radius of its funnel can reach from 25 to 500 meters, and if the column seems narrow to you, do not flatter yourself. It is better to retreat to shelter before it is too late. That is exactly what the continuous horn is screaming about. The cloud looks like a snowy mountain. Most likely, it has tightly wrapped the island and is not going to release it from captivity anytime soon. But the landscape has temporarily become completely fairy tale-like. What is this? A huge hot air balloon flying above the clouds, or a giant sail? Neither one nor the other. Before us is a phenomenon called a rainbow cloud, one of the most unusual kinds of heavenly wanderers. Another observation, the phenomenon of the rainbow cloud comes from Indonesia. Such a bright picture appeared in the sky that it resembles the feather of an exotic bird more than a cloud. And although the explanation is still the same, rainbow clouds are a product of the refraction of light through very cold water particles, crystals or drops, in the high layers of the atmosphere, the effect is still purely individual. These colors seem to have been enhanced by some kind of booster, so unnatural does the cloud feather look. I think Peter Jackson himself, the director of fantasy films based on Tolkien's sagas, would envy these shots. Is this not a scene from the Kingdom of Elves, Rivendell? But it is absolutely real. The sun colors the waterfall with the most unreal shades. In fact, the place is simply magical. The main thing is to catch the moment. Sea voyages are not only storms and thunderstorms, but also incredible sights that you will not see anywhere else. Here is another gift of nature. However you look at it, it turns out that you are in the center of this rainbow. Amazingly precise geometry, calculated so that you would not get bored constantly looking only at two endless blue strips, above and below the deck. Despite the smog and extreme heat, through the prism of a rainbow, Yellowstone looks like a cheerful place full of colors. Although the distorted landscape seems slightly unearthly, I wonder whether somewhere in the universe there is its double. Ghost ships are sailing above the horizon. Have you ever seen anything like this? But do not rush to mock the authenticity of the footage. It is real. The phenomenon we are observing here has its own name, Fata Morgana. This optical illusion is created by layers of air with different densities. They reproduce mirror reflections. And then a ship can very well soar into the sky before our eyes because we see its illusory copy. Usually these layers arise in the lower layers of the atmosphere as a result of temperature differences. And then welcome to the fairy tale, where the fairy Morgan will entertain you. And here is the solution. The little cloud decided to spend the night above the island, and in the morning it turned into fog and slowly dispersed. So the tale of the city of Kitej, which hid from an invasion, was probably based on a similar natural phenomenon. The mountain settlement turned into a giant concrete mixer. A stream of mud rushes down from the peaks and captures stones and trees, turning houses into debris and streets into waterfalls. No one can cope with such pressure, neither machinery nor people. All that remains is to flee and to take the features of the landscape into account when building. I think something like this happens here every year, but even knowing that, would you settle in an apocalyptic area? This is not a mud bath. Fountains rise from somewhere underground, and the observer comments that they emit a strong smell of gas. If that is so, then most likely this is the preparation for the eruption of a mud volcano, and being near flammable objects is the same as lighting a cigarette at a gas station.
And it smells like propane.
With the clanging and rumbling of a freight train of 100 cars, the water breaks the iron bridge. The river decided to take it with itself, to carry it along the current in case it finds a better use for it. By the way, if city engineers had decided to replace it with a new one, they would not have found a better method of dismantling. No costs and no cleanup. Let us look at these unique moments from Costa Rica. This is how a large-scale flood begins. What seems like a wave, then a stream, becomes a muddy waterfall in a few seconds, and another minute later, no longer fits within the banks. Appreciate how turbulent the flow is and how difficult it would be to keep your balance in muddy water full of treacherous fragments, trees, and trash, if someone were unlucky enough to end up in it. The embankment has turned into a dead end, and now everyone who wanted to end up in another part of the city is also in it. They will have to look for detours over the hill, since the sea did not have enough space and spilled over the parapet. We are observing the rampage of Hurricane Alex on European territory. In a short period of time, the area was transformed beyond recognition. The raging flood streams destroyed infrastructure and created dangerous situations everywhere, wherever you might go. Even the road is torn out like a carpet from under your feet.
Putain de merde!
A black stream slowly approaches in a straight line, but suddenly turns out to be not a little stream at all, but an entire river of mud and trash. Now the author of the footage needs to turn around so as not to merge with it into one whole. Any structure on the edge of a cliff will sooner or later collapse into it. After the rains, the soil was washed out and the supports could no longer hold the little house over the jungle. It is good that no one was inside and that it did not happen at night. But how can you understand that a house that intends to collapse soon is giving you warning signals? You were driving at night through a storm on an unlit road and suddenly realized that it ended much earlier than you reached your destination. Now a mountain stream flows here. Part of the mountain could not hold out and decided to come down to the people. It would be good if they managed to decipher its treacherous plan and evacuate it in advance. It looks as though the settlement is uninhabited, but one way or another, nature intended to bury this area, as they say, over its head. So all we have left are the shots that documented this event. A landslide is possible in the desert too. Sand only looks like a mountain, but in reality it is a treacherous, loose pile with a thin crust on top. So your desert safari may unexpectedly become a mountaineering quest. We are observing the dynamics of the development of a landslide in a quarry. As soon as stones and soil begin to move, the slope, gravity, and friction only increase the mass of material ready to collapse downward. It is important to understand that any soil, sand, or snowy mass is subject to this pattern. Usually, our consciousness performs this trick when you are sitting in a stationary train and another one is moving parallel to you, and then it seems to you that you are the one moving. Here is another optical illusion. The feeling is that the bridge has slipped off its supports and suddenly moved along the field. In reality, everything is the opposite. The water brought green islands and is trying to push them under the structure. If you are standing on the bridge, you can experience the illusion of traveling on it along the river if you look only downward, as the camera angle shows. If you see such a funnel on a calm river, do not worry and do not recall frightening swamp realities. This is about nature's engineering. If the water is spinning rapidly, then there may be two reasons. Either there is an impressive hole on the bottom commanding this parade, or two opposite currents meet at this point, fail to come to an agreement, and form a whirlpool. Considering that technical spillways are arranged according to the same principle, with a hidden water reservoir below, the presence of such a powerful pull is quite understandable. It is better not to swim near such swirls. The author of the video is trying to explain that at the beginning of every spring, something strange happens in this lake. From this platform in the middle, sand begins to spread around the entire perimeter, coloring the water in chalky shades.
The beginning of the spring, summer, when I first...
This parallel pattern resembles lanes in a swimming pool, but this geometrically perfect surf is the result of the current's work. When water moves under the influence of acceleration, it can reproduce a sound similar to the work of a motor or the stomping of a herd of horses. There are not many places on the planet with such waves, but as a rule, they are observed in areas where a river connects with the sea. A river trip turned into a blockbuster called Salmon Attacks. The funniest thing is that they had not even planned to fish, but the fish themselves began jumping into the boat so fiercely that they surely gave these guys slaps and smacks with their tails and fins. The whole point is that they ended up in a spawning zone, and the fish's insane behavior is merely a seasonal pattern. As they say, if they are giving, take it and do not refuse. So 10 to 15 kilograms of fresh salmon has never made anyone unhappy. You need to learn to accept nature's gifts with gratitude, even if they have whipped you across the cheeks a little. It is the fishermen who who would feel disappointed if a game of mahjong assembled the combination for him by itself and he did not get to experience the thrill of the hunt. But spotting does not happen every day of the year either. At moments like this, you have to catch luck by the tail.
Oh, goddamn, what the hell?
People say one day feeds the year. This means that you have to be in the right place at the right time, like these Indian fishermen. The monsoon season raises deep waters, mixing chemical elements, and there is always a lot of sodium chloride in the ocean. These compounds make plankton glow, and the fish simply follow it in huge numbers. Then all you have to do is collect the catch without going far out to sea. So the fishermen turn out to be the final link in this food chain. One of the most delightful sights one can encounter in the open sea is observing a huge pod of dolphins. Here they are, rapidly jumping and approaching, making the water around them seem to boil. Their high intelligence allows them to coordinate their actions and go around the boat. Notice that not one ended up in the boat like a crazed salmon. A humpback whale enjoys plankton in the waters near eastern Greenland. It moves in a spiral, collecting its lunch in a lunchbox. Watching this from a bird's eye view is much more interesting than from the side of a boat. Besides, no one disturbs anyone, and the vessel does not risk being overturned like the boat of overly curious enthusiasts. Let us admire the smooth dance of the ocean giant. Today it is performing a solo number. Another amazing experience of communicating with the living nature of the ocean can be gained by swimming among a huge school of small fish. From afar, this ball resembles a giant sea urchin, but this is how a school of small fish saves itself from predators. They stay together, forming a single whole. It is easier this way to pretend to be a large animal. Well, these tricks probably work sometimes, but for the diver, most likely this day became a wonderful interactive excursion into a world of silver flashes and astonishing pictures. Many mollusks play hide and seek all day on coastal sand. As soon as the water recedes, they appear on the surface to breathe and have a snack. And when a new wave comes, they also dive into their shelters, sometimes sticking their breathing siphons outside. These guys have dotted the beach like a brood of chicks. And if you think you are walking on sand, that is not quite true. You are on the roof of an apartment building where millions of bivalves, univalves, and other silent inhabitants live. A direct mockery of beginner surfers. Oh, come on, even birds catch a wave here. And for those who are lucky, a fish comes with it as well. Please give something to a former member of the State Duma. Alright, I remember it in German and I can also do it in French. What looks like comic begging is actually drying wings. We simply scoop up the wind and catch the sun. Scoop and catch with no extra energy costs needed. This strange device making the sounds of a shootout is not a gadget and not an alien. The lyrebird can produce almost any sounds it has ever heard. It is nature's best impersonator. Now it will release its tail and turn from a radio transmitter into a rather cute little bird. One question remains. Where did it hear all these soundtracks? Do they play blockbusters on a big screen at the zoo? The hunt of a flock of seabirds resembles a rockfall. They crash into the water, diving all at once as a whole cloud, without pushing or colliding, while one throws itself downward and another surfaces at that same moment. Most likely, a school of fish has arrived, and there will be enough for everyone. There is a hole somewhere in the air tank. The rain is leaking in a thin stream onto one spot no more than 1.5 meters in diameter, and the tank reaching up to the rain cloud, which has sprung a leak and is dripping, is hanging in place and not moving. Sometimes nature jokes and throws some animals onto land along with the rain. You may very well get a chance to see a fish fall or a frog downpour. Some wildlife protectors cannot allow themselves to drive calmly along a road covered with some creatures. They have to clear the path in such a peculiar way. I wonder how many kilometers of cleanup they still have ahead of them.
Where did all these people come from? Too God behind.
Gardeners were puzzled by a train of caterpillars that departs and arrives at the same platform every day on schedule. They rack their brains over why they walk in single file and how they choose the engine driver who knows the route exactly. But if we reason logically, one caterpillar is an insect, and for a bird, simply food. 10 of them in a line are already a worm, and hundreds of individuals in a caravan visually resemble a snake, which not every bird will dare to attack. This is the same technique a fish school uses when it clusters into a ball, but in a land version. This funny round dance resembling a walk of prisoners in a prison yard is actually a sentry ritual. Look at what they are walking around. This is how birds behave when a predator or something potentially dangerous enters their field of vision. They want to show, "Hey, hello, we are on alert." I wonder, if the terrible predator shows signs of life, will the ring around it tighten? A sight worthy of horror. Snakes, as is known, also love milk and have learned to get it on their own. The cow apparently has to share without complaint, since when you are tied with a rope, there is not much choice. If a snake writhes along its axis in this way, it means that it is the one that needs help, not you. Such convulsions are nervous spasms caused by injury or pesticide poisoning. So if you have the opportunity to contact Wildlife Protection Services or Animal Control, show generosity. You may not have known that sea scallops are not at all like amorphous mollusks with a sedentary lifestyle. On the contrary, they swim very rarely and are quite active. You can even have a fun interaction with them if you know how to laugh underwater.
That's not funny.
As is known, elephants adore water and bathing. They swim beautifully and even dive underwater, but I cannot say with certainty that this bath gives the female elephant much pleasure. Perhaps she is simply following instructions because she has no choice, like most of us in routine office work. For comparison, go to any national park and see how elephants behave in large bodies of water in their natural environment. A modern architectural designer's attempt to create a hybrid of eco and urban styles led to people shrugging in confusion while animals try to master urban exteriors. I suppose this eclectic building soon risks turning either into a dovecote or into a termite mound. Angkor Wat of the 21st century probably aimed to call on people to pay more attention to living nature, but it looks like an abandoned chapel from Gogol-style horror stories. Let us look at stories with invasions of animals and plants. In 2019, the southern regions of Russia suffered from a strange natural disaster. Hordes of hungry locusts descended on agricultural lands. Billions of insects gathered into a real cloud in order to migrate, but everyone wants to eat along the way, and the lands that happened to lie on their route were almost completely devastated, with no prospects for a harvest. The locusts were driven from their settled places by an unfortunate combination of heat and the subsequent drought, and in search of food they decided to set off on a journey. The same invasion happened in Madagascar, and it was recognized as the most catastrophic for agronomy and farming in the past 60 years. America is a spacious country, and on the plains the wind does whatever it wants. Right now, it has decided to hide the highway under balls of thorny bushes, also known as tumbleweeds. It sweeps them right under the wheels of cars, and if not for the encouraging horizon ahead, the driver would hardly continue the journey with enthusiasm. Since there is no lighting here and the poles do not hint at the presence of a road, if the markings disappear under these balls, finding the way will become rather difficult. The highway has turned into a hayloft because of desert thorn bushes that the wind drove into a hollow. Now your car will have to be a bulldozer for a little while to clear the way. The main thing is not to get stuck in this tangle, otherwise you will really have to call technical assistance instead of being it. If you think the bushes in the road are covered with frost, you are mistaken. The area around the Greek lake Vistanita has become a real camp for spiders. Everything around is covered with dense webbing. Nature created unusually comfortable conditions for the reproduction of the spider colony, and this population experienced a real demographic explosion. At least the locusts passed by this buffet and headed farther south. While walking along a deserted beach, one can stumble upon objects that look like props from Pirates of the Caribbean. Here, for example, is a mini version, not the Black Pearl of course, but a very picturesque boat completely occupied by marine inhabitants. They, one might say, have already merged into one whole and will remain inseparable forever. It looks a little disgusting, but the sea leaves nothing without attention. In the middle of the night, a cruise ship was attacked by hundreds of birds. They chaotically crammed into every room and constantly collided. At first, this behavior looked like an attack, but in reality, they were disoriented. During a migration flight, birds use their own navigator, but the bright light from the liner could knock them off course and cause panic. That is why they and the passengers had to live through a night of horror. Ostriches also run in the mornings. Although there is a common opinion about the stupidity of most birds, I would not underestimate some species. For example, this guy gave way, tactfully changing lanes to the right. Not every driver ahead sometimes guesses to do the same, let you pass without creating chaos on the road. Usually leopards and jaguars lounge imposingly on branches, and here we have an installation involving wild goats. What can you do? Mountain dwellers are called by height, and they have to make do with what is available. Let us compare the scale. These are not moose, not elephants. These are construction cranes covered with spots and crossing to the other side of the road. It is simply hard to believe that a car seems like a bug compared with the height of an adult giraffe. It is good that they were not in a hurry. If the fear of snakes has some scientific name, as the fear of spiders does, arachnophobia, then this place teeming with reptiles looks exactly the way it does in those people's nightmares. This is not the usual snow whirlwind on Russian roads. This is a swarm of insects, moths, or God forbid locusts, also hurrying toward the city. A surveillance camera in a garden captured something unsightly. On a clear day, a black shadow of uncertain outline appeared on the property and became denser and denser. It is good if you are a biologist, then you will immediately say which insects might have visited the owners. But if, for example, you are interested in esotericism, then this footage will hardly cause a positive reaction in you. So what shall we do with it? Write it off to nature? Or assume that not all karmic bills have been paid in this house? For both people and animals, the question of choosing a partner is equally important and complicated. How do you choose, from thousands and millions of other representatives of your species, the one with whom you can be together not for one day, but for years? And if you are lucky, solve the problem of choice once and for all. Look, among a multitude of seemingly identical pink flamingos, each one must find its other half. In order for pairs to form, these amazing birds have invented their own courtship rituals. They perform a dance in groups so that potential partners can make their own ranking. In addition to their convincing effectiveness in solving a clear task, these performances enchant with their magical beauty. This sea creature is a real touch-me-not. As soon as someone touches it, it immediately begins to turn into stone. So vulnerable is its soul. Look, if you saw it like this, would you suspect that it is a living plant? Personally, I have never seen anything like it. Have you? This tree is not a mystical conductor of biblical prophecies. It is merely a vent. When groundwater rises high toward the surface after heavy rains, it accumulates like a bubble and looks for an exit, creating pressure. In this case, it was helped by a channel in the trunk of an old tree that cracked long ago and can now work a little as a fountain.
Water come out of tree, this is a miracle.
It is no secret that a tree is a transport system for liquid. It nourishes its cells with its sap, but some species of trees in African forests can absorb a large amount of water from the soil, storing it for later, and even serve as a kind of water pipeline. When a lot of water accumulates in the trunk, any cut releases an entire stream. You can use this instead of looking for the nearest body of water. Many of you will think that this is staged footage, but the stream of water really does gush from the stone in the most natural way. Breaking out from an underground spring, it finds channels in the cracks of the rock, and since they are narrower than the original flow, pressure arises, which keeps this fountain in a lively state. In New York State, in the Shell Creek Reservation, there is a place called Eternal Flame. Here, a paradox combines flame and water. Most likely, natural gas comes out from below through a fissure in the rock, and the water does not prevent the torch from burning non-stop at all. It is worth seeing this with your own eyes to understand how diverse our planet's tricks are. We are on the Iranian coast, whose beach acquired a bright red shade after heavy rains. The thing is that the local soil is very rich in iron-containing minerals, and when iron oxide mixes with water, it colors the soil a fantastic color. An unusual contrast with the blue of the sea, is it not? In conditions of heat and drought, such as in the second largest sandy desert in the world, the Taklamakan, one can encounter an unusual phenomenon. This phenomenon can be observed in northwestern China, in the center of the Tarim Basin. When the wind drives sand across the plain, collisions and friction between the particles create electricity. If the voltage reaches a noticeable value, the hair on your head can rise and move, making a characteristic crackling sound. There are many people who want to try this amusing experience on themselves, and truly, it is more interesting than practical experiments in school physics lessons. Everything connected with swampy terrain is inseparably linked with mysticism. There are will-o'-the-wisps, strange sounds, and some inexplicable movement. In reality, almost everything is explainable. We see gas being released from underwater soil layers. Yes, it bubbles and produces the effect of boiling, but a swamp cannot exist any other way. When there is little oxygen and organic materials decompose, something has to get out of this eternal mud. So do not be afraid of the gurgling sounds. This is the usual routine of the bog. In desert regions of the Middle East, oil layers sometimes lie close to the surface of the earth, and if they find a crack, a kind of spring appears. Since oil and gas are lighter than water and the nearby minerals, they rise together. So places where oil gushes out from underground really do exist. But do not think that these little swamps offer the easiest oil production in the world. If it is human labor, it is associated with harsh climate, difficult technical conditions, and risks. Gas can be released spontaneously, and high temperatures do not add enthusiasm for working in this hellish boiler room. Besides, thickened oil turns into tar. Try taking a shower after work. The sky over the Philippines lit up with all possible colors of the rainbow in a few seconds. They were brought from the depths of space by a small asteroid. It completed its mission so beautifully that Earthlings would remember it in the final seconds of its flight for as long as possible. A sun pillar is not a software error in the Matrix. This rare natural phenomenon can be observed when sunlight penetrates through billions of ice particles located close to the ground. If you have ever seen a light suspension in the air, not of snowflakes but of droplets, it is precisely this that allows light to merge into a vertical column and create a reflection of the ray in the same direction and at the same angle at which the luminary is favoring us at that moment. Astonished observers gathered before an inexplicable picture. A column of light stands across the sky, shimmering with different shades of neon glow and pearlescent highlights. Honestly, I would also classify this as messages from above, because you are not going to claim that this is simply a sunset, are you? Maybe cloud specialists will say that cold air and fog worked here, but I had never seen anything like it before. Perhaps you will add your remarks about this episode. It seems as if the sea and the sky have changed places. These massive waves above predict nothing but a storm. But it is interesting that the giant dents are made by the confrontation between cold storm air and warmer coastal air. As is known, warm air rises upward, while cold air strives to press it downward. That is why sharply outlined zigzags appeared in the sky. Strange flashes of light appeared in the sky over the mountainous part of southern Russia. This episode was filmed in the Republic of Adygea. This region is known for recreation centers, not for the military. If this dancing light flew in from space and is about to land, why does it dance as if two kites are performing a mysterious ritual in an embrace? Asteroids or parts of spacecraft do not behave like this. Their trajectory is a straight fall. If this is an aircraft, then why do the lights split in two and then into several more smaller ones? Honestly, even in all our previous episodes, I cannot recall a phenomenon like this. Perhaps you will share your thoughts on this matter. Is this a UFO, a space body, or a new natural phenomenon? California again, an unidentified flying object again, but in this case the problems are most likely not with the eyewitnesses but with the object itself. Some kind of infernal flame spreads around it. Honestly, this does not look much like a burning drone, and I would like to know more about this incident if the video did not cut off so soon. I wonder what could leave such a trail in the sky, a celestial body or space transport? Since it forms such a plume, could it be rotating? And how can one understand whether it is falling to Earth or moving parallel to the ground and under control? What do you think it is? A rocket trail or a UFO? Residents of a rural area are filming an unusual phenomenon. Something glows brightly in the night sky, then splits into parts and smoothly heads toward the ground. Most likely this is not a comet, since its movement is usually horizontal, and not a meteorite. If the movement is smooth, then the speed is not so high and the weight is not great. We are probably observing the landing of a satellite, since it is falling apart in the atmosphere. Well, they have a chance to go there tomorrow and see what fell.
Он что-то вниз падает. Это по-любому что-то запустили.
Salar de Uyuni is the name of this unusual place in Bolivia where the ground looks like a perfect mirror of the sky. The famous salt flat in the central Andes is located on the side of a dried-up lake at an elevation of 3,650 meters above sea level. What makes it unique is not only its vast area. Imagine a giant mirror with an area of 10 square kilometers. The main miracle is the reflections that appear on the surface after rain. When water covers the white salt layer, here one can observe the most peaceful picture in the world. I suppose a trip here counts as a retreat. What story today became a real revelation for you? Write in the comments everything you think about these videos and subscribe to the TopFacts channel for collections of the most incredible facts and videos from all over the internet. Thank you for watching, and right now watch the previous incredible episodes that have already appeared on your screen.